Friends, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the invitation to speak on endotherapy for GERD. GERD is on the increase across the globe with disturbances in the lifestyle with the significant complications like Barrett's and also C. esophagus in some people. We all know that we have various options with three key objectives in our therapy. One of course is to improve the symptoms, second to prevent any complications later, and also to have a better quality of life. To achieve all these three important treatment objectives, we have now three options: medical, anti-reflux surgery and endotherapy. When we decide about what to do in which patients, vast majority of the patients we all know, they will be responding to the PPI, and only 1/5, that is about 10 to 20% of the people may only respond partially, or they may be very reluctant to take a long term PPI. In those people and also those with the very severe symptoms, we have the option of anti-reflux surgery, but we all know that it is not without complications, both the surgical morbidity and also the complications following that, like dysphagia, gas bloat syndrome, flatulence, and also there are some treatment failures and a need for reoperations. In those individuals and also those who are reluctant to undergo any surgery, can we consider an endotherapy as a sandwich between those failed in PPI, not willing to take anti-reflux surgery, and endotherapy? That is what we are going to hear to say the role for the scarless surgery. We all know already that endoscopy is important in the algorithm of investigation for GERD patients, including the barium swallow, 24-hour pH monitoring, manometry and impedance. But in addition, we also have now a role to play as far as the therapy is concerned, and also what an endotherapy or endoscopy will offer in a patient with a failed lap fundoplication. Let us go on one by one. Coming to the diagnostic modality, when we do an endoscopy in sliding hiatus hernia, traditionally what we do as an endoscopist is we have a look inside to look at what level is the hiatus, normally around 40 centimeter. Then withdraw the scope, look exactly the Z line. Thanks to the narrowband imaging, we will be able to accurately measure the Z line. Then very important thing for us to understand that when we are going to measure the type and also the size of the hiatus hernia, we need to see not only the axial length, but also the transverse length of the hiatus hernia by J maneuver, and also the degree of esophagitis by using one of the two classifications like Los Angeles and also Savory-Miller. The sliding hiatus hernia by far the commonest. We need to see whether it is a less than 2 centimeter, which is usually amenable for endotherapy. Next important thing, we need to understand the importance of what I call Hill classification of hiatus. Here is a Hill's classification, Hill grade 1 to grade 4. Hill grade 1 is a normal, the lower esophageal sphincter and the hiatus is normal, and it is lax during respiration and it remains open, as you can see here, whereas whether if it is not only it is open and allows more than 2 or 3 scopes, it can go, and also there is a herniation proximally and a sliding component, that is a grade 4 is actually the true hiatus hernia, the other two. So, as far as the endotherapy is concerned, most of the endotherapy is considered either in a grade 1 or grade 2 types of Hill's classification. And even though the barium and also CT is more useful for diagnosing the other types of hiatus hernia, in a paraesophageal hiatus hernia like here, you may be able to see during endoscopy, but we have to understand the whole anatomy before we submit anybody for any endotherapy treatment, because endoscopic findings in the case of GERD, we need to see if necessary even after the treatment how much of relief patient has in the degree of esophagitis, ulceration and also Barrett's changes. But also we need to understand there is an element of what we call a non-erosive reflux disease also existing in this country, and we need to liberally use various high definition endoscopy, magnification, all these things, or even the artificial intelligence in order to study the Barrett's display changes and if necessary biopsy. Once we have done, then when we decide in a given patient, this patient is not responding to the medical treatment, would rather require a anti-reflux surgery, but not willing to undergo, there if we are going to consider endotherapy, what are the options we have? In the past we had these three things, they came and gone: enterics, that is the injection of this inert material by an injection needle into the lower esophageal sphincter. Then other one, gatekeeper, where something like a silicone was injected in the lower esophageal junction regions like this, they improve the continence in these regions. Also the plication, what we call endo-cinch, but they are all now becoming outdated because whatever effect they had were short lived and they did not stand the test of time. So, now we are here to speak what is the efficacy of all these three things now available as an endotherapy modality: radio frequency ablation, endoscopic fundoplication, and endoscopic mucosal resection. Coming to the straight up procedure, as you can see here, the equipment, it is nothing but a radio frequency ablation device, which when it is passed, as you can see the steps and the procedure is clearly explained here. We do a diagnostic endoscopy to accurately measure the lower esophageal sphincter level, then you pass this device over a guide wire, then it has the electrodes are present like a needle, it goes inside this lower esophageal sphincter about half a centimeter interval. You just give this radio ablation, a low temperature around 65 to 80 degrees, then it causes in a matter of a few days, as you can see here. This is during the procedure and this is the after the application of the radio frequency ablation, and this causes a little tightening and hypertrophy of the lower esophageal sphincter, and this is the endoscopic picture as you can see here before and after. So, obviously it does work by increasing the tone and also the decreasing the transient relaxation of lower esophageal sphincter, and there is definite satisfactory subjective improvement in the patient. But whether it causes any significant objective improvement when you come to the D-Meester score or also the esophageal acid exposure time, there is variable results are happening in the when you look at the literature, and also but it is being tested as a safe procedure, a day case procedure, and a durable procedure at least for 10 years. So far as you can see, we have injected, we tried to stitch it, even bake it, but is it good enough? Because ideally the hiatus hernia, all this mechanism which causes the reflux hasn't been addressed by this mechanism. So, that is where the endoscopic fundoplication comes to the rescue. There are three different types of endoscopic fundoplication now in market. One, the commonest one is what we call total incisionless fundoplication by Isofix device, which the more new variety has all the modifications which makes it very effective, simple to do a procedure, where like any procedure after a check endoscopy and a dilatation of the cricopharynx, because to admit this device easily, it goes along with the scope, and the scope with the retroflexed, you insert the device, and the device itself as you can see is retroflexed, and look at the cardia, and once it is done that, and it has a special hook which is able to draw the esophagogastric junction. So, it is able to do a what we call a 270 degree esophagogastric plication by just putting various small plicating suturing material, and up to the maximum of 20 or more sutures circumferentially is done, creating a new valve by then increasing the continence and decreasing the reflux incidence. And this is a very novel procedure, and as you can see, it has a small suction device which is able to help to reduce the whatever small hiatus hernia, if it is less than 2 centimeter, it will also reduce it, push it inside. So, you are able to do the esophagogastric something like an anastomosis or a plication by this device. Circumferentially you just work multiple things. So, it is a durable, very effective and procedure, and it has stood the test of time. And but we need to be very careful where it is useful. As I said before, it is only in people with a very small hiatus hernia or no hernia, with a Hill's grade 1 or 2, with confirmed reflux, and these are all the various contraindications, as you can see, including the paraesophageal hiatus hernia, people with a body mass index more than 35, because this is the one place where you can see what is normal, what happens in a hiatus hernia. Most of these anatomical abnormalities are corrected, like what we do in surgery, like the hiatus pinch-cock mechanism and getting the angle of his and trying to achieve the intra-abdominal esophagus. These are the objectives of any surgical intervention, and this to large extent has been attempted. So, this is what we do in a Nissen's, and this is what happens in the esophagus device. So, both have all these things anatomically is corrected. So, that is why it has a fairly impressive result. Similar principle has been applied for using this GERD device, which is an endoscopic full thickness plication device. As you can see here, it is more or less same way, but it has something like a joystick, as you can see a surgeon holding like this, with a small pediatric endoscopy going in the side port to see what exactly we are doing. The principle is more or less same like esophagus device. Here we are going to do only 2 plications here, more towards the greater curvature side, one after other, and this is more like a horizontal rather than a vertical fundoplication, and here it is usually gastric fundoplication, whereas there it is a esophageal gastric fundoplication. And the third system, which is marketed in very few countries, is what we call the Medicus Muse system, the Medicus ultrasonic surgical endostapler, which is a device 1 in 3, that is, it has endoscopy, ultrasound and also stapling device. It is a very novel principle, and it works well because this is a single operator system compared to the other 2. So, there are comparisons, as you can see how esophagus, GERD-X and also the Muse compare. As far as you can see the cessation of PPI usage, you can see a significant response, but when you coming to the long term objective response, it is variable. Not many randomized studies have been done. So, to put it shortly, when you compare the systematic review, the lap fundoplication surgery versus endotherapy, if you see, there is definitely a improvement in the physiological parameters, but that is very little in the case of endoscopy when it compares to the laparoscopic surgery. Because when we do any procedure, whether it is endoscopy or laparoscopy, we ought to decide about all these things: how effective it is in healing, how safe the procedure, and is it convenient for the surgeon to perform, what is the cost for the patient, is it durable, is it reversible. When you compare all these factors, then we have to make a logical decisions. When we are discussing, because the cost is a barrier, as you can see all these devices, one of the cost effective procedure which is actually designed by Professor Inoue more by an accident than design is what we call an endoscopic mucosal resection. As you can see here around the cardia and the J maneuver, you give injection to the mucosa, then you apply what we call the bands, then you go for the snare resection of this mucosa, what we call arms procedure, and by this you at the end leave an area like a horseshoe shaped area is devoid of mucosa, which if it heals with the fibrosis. So, that increases the continence of the lower esophageal sphincter. So, this is the little demonstration of band application, then you apply a snare and divide that and keep performing it almost 270 degrees, and it is not very close to the Z line. So, there are some details, if you follow, it is a fairly easy procedure and to learn, and also it is a very cheap and effective way of achieving this skill. The long term results yet to be achieved and discussed, and this is what we call the preoperative procedure, and this is what post-operatively the patient after a few months will look like, very continent, very effective result you can see. Similar procedure, but without doing so extensive banding and ligation, just application of this what we call the APC here. This is what we call ARMA procedure, anti-reflux mucosal ablation, as you can see here. So, all you need to do is inject an area with a saline, and that area with a pulse APC you just burn the tissue, and that if it heals with the fibrosis, it gives more or less the same result like before. Endoscopy not only useful for a straightforward GERD, because we know achalasia when we treat it with the poem, there also a GERD has been a problem, like here you have to have a treatment for this reflux problem after this. So, there are two important innovations happened already. One of course is doing what we call a double scope technique with a pediatric endoscopy. You just make sure that you do not go too long myotomy in the gastric region. At the same time, you also have a provision to form a anterior fundoplication with the help of the endoscopy, and this has been demonstrated successfully, and there are larger series are coming, and this is what we call a POEM F is a procedure which nullifies the chance of people getting a reflux after this. So, ladies and gentlemen, the three important messages I want to tell you is endoscopy therapy could be a standard of care, provided we have more prospective trials, and also we have a proper patient selection, and also we increase the experience of the endoscopic surgeon, and also we refine our techniques much more, but then sooner or later I am sure the scarless surgery and also the therapy by a flexible endoscopy platform is going to be the future. Thank you very much.